So I want to explain a little bit about the Mexican border crisis because I mention it when I'm talking about James, but I didn't want to make it seem like I was taken away from him and not talking about him because this video is supposed to be focusing on him. So the Mexican border crisis was a conflict that was during the Mexican Revolution. It was from November 20th, 1910 to June 16th, 1919. It was a fight between the Mexican military, which was backed by Germany. They lost about 867 soldiers, militia, and insurgents, and over 400 of the civilians. And it was against the United States military, which was backed by Britain and France. They only lost 123 soldiers and about 427 civilians. During the Mexican Revolution, American troops had been positioned at the border, which led to the fights. The height of the conflict came in 1916 when Pancho Villa had attacked Columbus, New Mexico, which I'm assuming is where most of the soldiers and civilians were killed. While the American soldiers couldn't capture Pancho, they killed two of his top lieutenants before returning to the States in January 1917. There were a few other smaller operations that took place in Mexican territories until the Battle of Ambos Nogales in August 1918, and that's where we kind of got the permanent border wall that was established. So James Barton was born in Altoona, Pennsylvania on May 10th, 1894 to George Woodward Barton. He was born in around 1868. I don't know the day and the month. And he died on March 2nd, 1907, which is about 10 years before James would die. His mother was Ella P. Barton, who was born on April 2nd, 1866, and she died on January 18th, 1961. The book I used to help me with my research mentioned 6 siblings. I could only find 3 with Find the Grave. I don't really have any other sources right now because I have to have ancestry. But the ones that I could find, I found a sister named Bertha Faye, but I don't know if she had any children, if she had any spouses that didn't pass away yet, but I couldn't find any other relatives for her other than her siblings. And then he had a brother named L. Harry Barton. He was born on July 23rd, 1903, and he died on February 25th, 1968. Harry married Ruth Alice Gilden, and they had one child that I could find named O. Gilden Barton, who was born on March 20th, 1930, and died about 21 years ago on January 7th, 2002, but I couldn't find any children for them, so they might have a spouse and child that didn't pass away yet, but I couldn't find any on Find the Grave. And the last one I found on the website was Charles B. Barton, and he was born sometime in 1805 and died in 1986. He married Lois B. Coffman, and they had 3 kids, so as far as I can tell, he's the one that had the most children. They had a son named Charles A. Barton, who was born on January 15th, 1926, and he died on August 19th, 1999, which, if the other 2 siblings had children and spouses, this is why I think they might still be alive. He married Audrey Edith Wirt, and they had one child named Lynn Marie Barry. The second child, so James's other nephew, would be Samuel V. Barton, who was born in 1928 and died on October 17, 1995. He married Mary Jean, and I don't know if they had any children or not because I couldn't find any, so if they have children, they haven't passed away yet. The youngest was James Richard Barton, who was born on February 27th, 1930, and he died on March 3rd, 2009. So yet again, if there's children involved with his siblings, they're probably still alive. He married Beverly Faith Dixon Shaw Barton, and either they didn't have same situation. They either didn't have children or their children haven't passed away. The book did mention two other sisters named Myrtle and Marguerite, but they don't mention any nieces or nephews that he had through them. And he had a brother named George, but yeah, couldn't either they're still alive or the research wasn't the best because there are a few conflicting things I found when I looked. So as far as I could tell, James was never married. He didn't have children. He was fairly young. He was in his early 20s when he died. So there's no mention of them. I found a military burial for him, and there's no mention of any wives, children's. So before the war, he actually he was a slaughterhouse apprentice before he joined the army. There's a newspaper clipping in the book that says that he was from 114 4th Avenue and that he had been in the Navy Reserve before he joined the Army. And he actually served in the Mexican border crisis, which is why I explained it in the beginning. He was stationed down there to help with the border crisis. He came home, left the Navy, went and became a slaughterhouse apprentice, and then joined the Army. He signed up for the Army around the same time the war happened. The other discretion I found was the newspaper clipping says that he was sworn in as a corporal. I don't know if that was his rank in the Navy, or I wouldn't assume so because I think Navy and Army have different names for their ranks. But it says he was sworn in as a corporal, but the burial record says that he was a private. So he was assigned to the 8th Ohio Infantry Company F. He'd never see battle because he died overseas. He died here at home. And as far as I could tell, 8th Infantry just altogether never got sent overseas, so none of them would see war during World War One. I did find that they went overseas during World War II, but I didn't look into it because this is about James and his time serving during World War One. So he was stationed at Akron, Ohio, but he didn't die there in a training accident or anything. He would actually die on March 25th, 1917. He was out with 5 other people, and they were just riding around, I'm assuming having a good time, and they were struck by a train near Mantua, Ohio. 5 of the people, James and 4 other people would be killed during the accident. So 6 people in the car, 1 makes it out alive. What are the odds? His body was brought back up here to Altoona, and the funeral arrangements were made by Otto Gilden, so I'm assuming a relative of his. He's buried at Oak Ridge Cemetery in lot number 61, section E. The records claim that he was killed in 1917. It has on his burial records that he was buried on March 25th, 1917, died March 25th, 1917. But his headstone says that he died in 1916. And the burial records also say that he served from June 19th, 1916 to the day after he was killed. If the records are accurate, then somewhere they got a mix-up in there. I couldn't find if the list of when he served is accurate or not because I didn't have the date for the newspaper clipping. But, yep, that's not very long because didn't serve in the war. He served during the Mexican border crisis, but that's a whole different war altogether. He yep signed up for the war and just never made it overseas. Hey guys, real quick, just want to thank you for listening to my video. I know it's not the best. It's first one doing different things while I'm trying to get the video done and recorded. I did go back and look, and I did find some children that his one relative had that I didn't notice whenever I first looked up their wives and everything. And like I said, I didn't want to take away from James. I wanted this to be kind of more about him. So I'll just put their names down in the description. And as far as I can tell from Find a Grave, they're still alive and kicking, and he's probably got like great nieces and nephews. But yeah, from what I could tell, if you look at the headstone for James, because I used the same picture for James and Bertha, as far as I could tell, Bertha didn't get married and have children because most of the other siblings that were married, they were buried beside their spouses, and James and Bertha are buried beside each other. So if Bertha was married, it would make sense for her to be buried next to her husband. Alright, just wanted to give you guys a little update. Alright, so thanks.